3rd May, 1937, around 8 p.m., a Hindenburg aircraft takes off from Frankfurt, Germany. This aircraft was headed to the other side of the Atlantic Ocean, to New Jersey, America. It carried about 97 people on board, 36 passengers and 61 crew members. And when I use the word aircraft here, I don't mean an airplane. Instead, the word aircraft means an airship. Hindenburg was an airship, the world's largest airship, 245 meters long. Compare its size with today's Boeing 747 aircraft and you will realize how enormous it actually was. Titanic, which was once the world's largest ship, Hindenburg was only 24 meters shorter than it. This is why Hindenburg was called the Queen of the Skies and was the pride of Nazi Germany. The view inside the Hindenburg airship was remarkable. People would experience luxuries while flying in the sky, which perhaps are lost today. Passengers enjoyed separate private rooms for sleeping, a dining room where everyone could eat together, and a lounge complete with a grand piano. There was also a reading and writing room, and the ticket price, $700 at that time, which is more than $7,000 today. Basically, only the wealthy could afford to travel in this. 6th of May, 1937. After a 3-day long journey, Hindenburg reaches America. Thousands of miles away, it is scheduled to land at Lakehurst Naval Air Station in New Jersey. It begins descending slowly. It was 7 p.m. During landing, people on the ground take hold of its ropes. It had a very different way of landing. Many people had gathered around to see it arrive because it was a historic ship. Some cameramen were also present there. That day, the Hindenburg's landing was being filmed on camera, but the weather conditions weren't favorable. The sky was overcast with clouds and strong winds. The captain took a sharp turn to align the airship with the direction of the wind. The crew on the ground rushed to secure the ropes. The aircraft was just about to land, when suddenly, a loud bang was heard. Within the blink of an eye, the airship was engulfed in flames. The ship collapsed in just 34 seconds, and the entire airship was destroyed in the fire.
The actual crash of the Hindenburg, an airship destroyed in less than half a minute. The seared and scorched skeleton of what was once a mighty airship.
The Hindenburg disaster shocked the world. What was the reason behind this catastrophe? Experts and investigators tried to find the answers. 3 main theories were presented. The first theory was that the airship was targeted for sabotage, that it was part of a dangerous plan to destroy the pride of Nazi Germany. Some people believed that an anti-Nazi activist, or perhaps another country, had secretly planted a bomb in the Hindenburg. That's why the sudden explosion occurred. Some people even believed that Adolf Hitler himself had ordered the destruction of the airship, that Hitler's people planted a bomb to blow up their own country's airship. But why would they do that? Well, the owner of the company manufacturing these airships was a man named Hugo Eckener. He was among the few people who openly spoke against Hitler and the Nazis during Hitler's rule. It was not easy to raise your voice against Hitler publicly at that time. This is the reason why, in 1933, when the Nazi Party came to power, Hitler tried to arrest Hugo Eckener. But at that time, his arrest was blocked by the German president, Paul von Hindenburg. Yes, that's right. The name of the German president at that time was Hindenburg, and now you can already guess the origin of the name of this airship. 3 years later, in 1936, when the world's largest airship was ready, Hitler's propaganda minister Goebbels requested Eckener to name the airship after Hitler, but Hugo Eckener refused, and he named the airship Hindenburg instead. Some people believe that Hitler blew up this airship out of jealousy, intentionally destroying it to ruin Eckener's reputation. Even before this, when the Hindenburg was on its first flight, Hitler's government tried to use it to spread Nazi propaganda. You will see, in many photographs of the airship, the Nazi party flags drawn on its tail. It is said that Hugo Eckener was very strict about safety standards, but when the Nazi party took control of the airship operations, they placed their own loyalists in key positions. People who were not qualified enough. They often ignored safety standards. That's why, during the Hindenburg's first flight, it had almost crashed. The airship was badly damaged, and a major argument followed the incident between the Nazi propaganda ministry and Eckener. But if we come to the second theory, it points to static electricity generated in the atmosphere by the airship itself. You must have read about static electricity in school. A static charge was said to have built up on Hindenburg's metal frame. When it sparked, the hydrogen gas inside the airship suddenly ignited. It was said that the pilot took a sharp turn and that maneuver caused the explosion. Then comes the third theory, which focuses on a lightning strike. As I mentioned earlier, the weather was bad that day, so it was theorized that lightning might have struck, causing the hydrogen to catch fire. So, which theory makes the most sense? Before we answer that, we need to understand the history of airships. Today, flying has become very ordinary because of airplanes. But if we go back 500 years, people could only dream of flying. In the 1500s, people would look up at birds soaring across the sky and feel jealous. Humans wished desperately that they could fly too. And many actually tried. In 1507, a man named John Damien covered his arms with chicken feathers and jumped from the roof of a castle in Scotland. He began flapping his arms like a bird, hoping he would take flight, but unfortunately, he fell from the roof. He broke several bones, and when asked later, he claimed that if he had used eagle feathers instead, he would have flown successfully. He was not the only one. Throughout history, many people attempted to launch themselves from towers or high walls, sometimes attaching feathers, sometimes strapping on kites, other times tying themselves to balloons. Eventually, people realized that if we want to fly, there are only two possible ways. First, make ourselves lighter than air, like with a balloon. Second, generate enough power to propel ourselves upward into the sky. For the second method, we don't need to be lighter than air. All the airplanes and helicopters you see today, they follow the second approach. They produce enough power to stay aloft. But the story of airships, friends, belong to the first method, flying through the air by being lighter than the surrounding atmosphere. In the 1770s, two brothers in France, Joseph Michel and Jacques-Étienne Montgolfier, brilliant and inventive minds, observed something that changed history. One day, they saw someone drying laundry over a fire. Joseph noticed that heat rising from the flames caused the cloth to lift upward. That moment sparked an idea to replicate that lifting effect on a larger scale. He began by building a small box out of thin wood, covered with lightweight cloth. Inside the box, he placed a crumpled piece of paper and set it alight. He watched as the box began to rise once the fire ignited. Immediately, he and his brother started constructing a larger version. On the 14th of December 1782, they conducted a test flight with a full-size model. They burned wool and hay beneath it, and the lifting force was so powerful that they lost control of the box, and it floated away for 2 kilometers. The next year, in 1783, they performed a public demonstration before the King of France, King Louis, at the palace in Versailles. During that demonstration, they placed a duck and a hen inside the box to show that animals could fly safely in it. When the king saw this, he was impressed, and they were granted permission to experiment with humans on board. And this, my friends, is how the hot air balloon was invented. Jacques-Étienne became the first man to fly in a balloon. Moving forward in our story, in the 1850s, in a small town in Germany, there lived a young boy named Ferdinand Adolf Heinrich August Graf von Zeppelin. Yes, quite a long name, with quite a bit of gravitas. This boy later traveled to America, and during the American Civil War, he observed how Union forces were using balloons for military purposes. His fascination with ballooning increased, and as he rose through the ranks of the army, by 1874, he had written down his vision of a future airship in his diary. By that time, balloons had already become significantly more advanced. Engines were being installed on them so they could be steered in a chosen direction. Some balloons used steam engines, others used electric-powered engines. In 1891, Zeppelin resigned from the army at the age of 52 and devoted himself entirely to designing airships. The basic concept was simple. A typical balloon had only one large gas bag, but if one could use multiple gas bags and also make the overall structure more rigid, then then a big and sturdy aircraft could be built. Zeppelin worked with a team of engineers to refine this idea. An aluminum framework was created. In 1898, he secured some funding, and with it, he developed the very first airship. It was called LZ-1. And friends, this is why we still call airships Zeppelins today, because they were named after the man who invented them, Zeppelin. But the story after this was filled with many problems and obstacles. Zeppelins used hydrogen for lift, while in America, they used helium. The difference between these two gases is enormous. Hydrogen can easily catch fire, while helium is an inert gas and does not ignite easily. The principle behind both is the same. Both gases are lighter than air, and this allows the airship to float in the sky. On the 2nd of July 1900, LZ-1 successfully completed its first flight. It remained airborne for 20 minutes, but suffered damage during the landing. Zeppelin began repairs, but due to limited funds, he had to mortgage his wife's assets to gather more money. He then completed LZ-2 in 1905, but before it could fly, a critical control component broke off, and it never took to the sky. It took another whole year to repair it. In 1906, he tested it again, but another major flaw emerged. In strong winds, control of the airship was lost. He salvaged the remaining parts to build LZ-3. He hoped to prove to the military that he was capable of building a reliable aircraft. The military insisted that the airship must remain operational for at least 24 hours. It had to pass a durability test, but it failed. So, to pass the test, he built LZ-4. Then one night, after a powerful storm, LZ-4 was left completely destroyed. This story is a powerful real-life reminder of the old saying, try till you succeed. Those who never stop trying never truly fail. Around this same period, in 1903, the famous Wright brothers completed their first successful flight in an airplane. After countless attempts, Zeppelin finally began receiving attention. People started recognizing the relentless effort he put into building airships. He received more financial support and eventually founded a company. He improved LZ-3 further, and in 1908, new test flights were conducted. Despite unfavorable weather, these flights were a success. LZ-3 was officially accepted by the government, and Zeppelin was praised widely. Over the next several years, he continued improving his designs, but he died in 1917. After World War I ended in 1918 and the Treaty of Versailles was signed, Germany was no longer allowed to maintain military aircraft. Up until this point, airships had been used primarily for military purposes. Here, Dr. Hugo Eckener enters our story. After Zeppelin's death, Eckener took charge of the company, and he was the first to recognize that beyond military or wartime use, Zeppelins could serve as commercial passenger vehicles as well. In 1924, LZ-126 embarked on its first major flight. It was piloted by none other than Hugo Eckener himself. That journey, over 8,000 kilometers, was completed in just 80 hours. When this airship landed in America, crowds greeted it with applause, calling it the Poltizmos, Angel of Peace. A machine once used only for war was now being used to connect people. Eckener then developed the next model, LZ-127 in 1928, but its success would not last long. As I mentioned, the Nazi Party came to power in 1933, and Eckener was among those who openly criticized Hitler. Now, returning to the time after the Hindenburg disaster, after investigations spanning many decades, it was determined that neither Hitler nor the Nazi Party caused the tragedy. The leading explanation, the most widely accepted theory, was hydrogen leakage combined with a spark of static electricity. Sadly, the disaster devastated public confidence in airships. People understood just how flammable hydrogen was. Traveling in airships suddenly felt extremely dangerous. Yes, helium was available as an alternative, but the problem was that nearly all helium supply was controlled by America, and America had imposed a strict ban on exporting helium gas. By the 1940s, on one hand, public trust in airships kept falling. People were simply afraid to fly in them, while on the other hand, airplanes started improving. the speed, reliability, and operating cost of passenger airplanes improved rapidly. In comparison to aeroplanes, the speed of airships was very slow, around 100 kilometers per hour, whereas the airplanes were flying at 700 or 800 or 1000 kilometers per hour. It was difficult to get helium gas, and in bad weather, airships were more vulnerable. This is why people of our generation neither traveled in these airships nor saw them. It is very unfortunate because the experience of traveling in them was very different. Flying slowly at a low altitude and with such big windows, what a view it must have been. The good news is that in the coming years, these airships can be revived again. In 2017, a UK-based company, Hybrid Air Vehicles, ran a test flight for their giant airship, Airlander 10, known as the world's largest aircraft. Today, it is not so difficult to get helium gas, so it is much safer. Plus, due to climate change, the concern for carbon emissions is increasing. So, in comparison to aeroplanes, these airships release 1/10 of the carbon emissions. Fuel costs are also reduced, and they fly almost silently without much noise. So, it is estimated by this company that after 2030, they will start commercial flights in their airships. How will it be? Only time can tell. But if you like this video, like the video, subscribe my channel for more unlock histories. Thank you for watching.